Welcome to Burning River Radio, baseball edition. No more Danny today. He'll be back next time. I'm Joe Koblitz, obviously from Burning River Baseball. I am here today with Mike Melaragno, Justin Latta, and John Hutchison, all from Burning River Baseball. And opening day is coming up very shortly, so we have a lot to talk about. Oh, wow. We can start off first before we're going to do all our predictions this episode for the upcoming season. But does anyone have anything to say about the way the 25-man roster kind of came into completion the last couple days? We've got Yandy Diaz. We've got Michael Martinez. I think that pair of players will make every single fan happy. Half of that will make every fan happy, no matter what you like.
Yeah, you're gonna like Diaz. I mean, I think that was the best choice there. I mean, you're gonna get a guy who can hit for sure. Well, we hope. But he sure seems like he can hit. Who knows with his defense? If he's just absolutely terrible, I mean, it's not like he can't be sent down to the minors at some point and you bring up Urshela or somebody else. So I like him up. But Martinez, just where do you even start with that guy?
My only two words
but I think
that roster is free Yandy. That's it, free Yandy.
Yeah, the old school fans, the old school who like veteran leadership and intangibles and hate numbers, they all love Martinez, so they're happy that he's on the team. And Francona is one of those guys.
Words in my mouth. I would consider myself a numbers guy, and I don't love Martinez, but I certainly like him because he can play any position on the field, and he can do it at pretty much replacement level. I mean, that's very hard to find.
He can't. No, first thing, he's got a -2 career WAR, and so he's not replacement level. He's well below replacement level, and defensively, he's terrible at pretty much every position. Gonzalez, who would have been the other option, is league average defensively most around, and he could possibly hit a little better than Martinez, whereas Martinez can't hit better than Martinez by the transitive property, I think.
Probably the other part of that, though, is, he's probably the guy that'll go when Lonnie Chisenhall comes off the DL, I would think. That would be my thought, at least my hope.
Who, Martinez?
Yeah.
I was actually thinking that it would probably be Abraham Almonte.
Well, it could be. If Diaz is hitting, but he's not fielding, maybe you throw him in the outfield a little bit. I mean, he's gotten some work there. If the guy's hitting, I think he's going to stay on the roster. So,
yeah, we'll see. I mean,
Almonte
was hitting last year when we sent him down.
Well, I think
early in the season,
I think Almonte's here to stay. I mean, he was one of those key cogs. Everybody talks about the fact that, okay, we didn't have Brantley, we didn't have Carrasco, we didn't have Salazar going into the postseason. Well, we didn't have Almonte either. I mean, he was very productive the entire regular season, most of it, when he wasn't suspended. But, I mean, the Indians really missed him. And I tell you what, he is a very productive hitter. So I don't think
obviously that's true, but the weird thing about it was that when the Indians were announcing their final roster spots, they never really announced Naquin. They never said, okay, Tyler Naquin's made the team. So that must have just been an assumption from the beginning. I hadn't made that assumption from the opening of camp. I had kind of thought it was going to be a battle. But they made an announcement when Almonte made the team. So that means he was on their bubble. And what, Justin?
I said they also missed Almonte last year because the outfield was trash. This year, the outfield's so much better now that you have Brantley back. So, I mean, not that Almonte's not a good player, but he has an option, so he gives you flexibility. But they missed him last year because the outfield had Rajai Davis, Tyler Naquin, who you weren't sure what he was going to do. Lonnie was hurt and had a horrible spring. And then you had Colin Cowgill and Marlon Byrd. I mean, the outfield's way better this year, so that's why they missed him so much last year.
And I do think Martinez will be around for the long haul, at least until Kipnis gets back. Once Kipnis is back, you can kind of shuffle Jose Ramirez into that play wherever you need him to play on any particular day role. But I think that Diaz gets sent down for Kipnis and probably Almonte for. It depends on who's hitting and if anyone else gets hurt too. I mean, it's hard to predict roster moves weeks in advance.
Well, why do you?
It's
Why
even
do you
harder
not?
to predict.
Why don't
Sorry.
you think Gonzalez didn't make it? I mean, couldn't he have been the
'Cause he's
utility
young.
guy? Well, but I mean, they're trying to
He
win
could
this
have.
year. So
That's
why?
my argument.
Yeah, why don't? Why
Yeah,
isn't
my
he
argument
the
is he's better at
utility
every
guy
facet.
instead of
Because
Martinez?
Francona likes veterans.
I guess. I just.
Got that extra option you're on.
That's the only excuse.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean, I understand.
Since I'm in the business of fact checking, I did a little bit of fact checking on Joe here, and it looks like Martinez, I wasn't aware of this, but it looks like he actually posted a positive ultimate zone rating for 2016. Go figure that.
How exciting.
So when you mentioned that he was below replacement level at every single position, and he plays
At what position, though?
poorly defensively, well, the numbers state otherwise.
But what position? You can't have a UZR, like a cumulative UZR across positions is calculated for each one individually.
He had a positive UZR at every single position last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's hard to believe. And I don't trust UZR completely. I'm going to go with my eye test. That when I saw him playing spring this year, he was terrible every single place I saw him. His best position is second base, and I doubt he's going to play there much.
All right, we
He'll
should
probably
probably
play
get into
mostly
predictions
third.
here.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. Anyway, yeah, so we went out and essentially tried to predict everything that would happen for the entire season. 7 of us made predictions. A couple of us aren't here. Gavin Potter isn't on the show today. And then Kate and Brad do Cleveland Baseball and Brews. I think they're going to talk about their stuff on their podcast.
Yeah,
But the rest of us are all here today.
They're both too good to join us on Burning River Radio since they've got their own podcast.
Yeah. Well, I didn't actually invite Brad. I probably should have. They were all nice enough to host our Do You Wahoo trivia tournament during the off season, since I didn't want to do any work on that, or any more work than I already did. Anyway, I don't want to go through all the predictions, but I do kind of want to just get some explanations maybe on some of these. So you can read on BurningRiverBaseball.com both. There's 2 articles. One is the team predictions and one is the league predictions. So we'll start with the team stuff. And I like, at the end of the season, I always give out awards, and we vote on those awards as a site. Everyone gets together and votes, and everybody's votes count equally, even though I should count for like triple. But everyone counts equally because we're a democracy, I guess. And is there a monarchy, democracy? Anyway, so I like the awards that we have because they kind of hit every facet of the team. So I think that's what we need to go through now. Last year's most improved player was Jose Ramirez. It was a really easy pick because he was trash the year before that, essentially. Now, Justin may argue otherwise. But he was nothing in 2015, and in 2016 he was an MVP candidate. So I mean that was a crazy improvement. There are guys who could have years like that. So I'll let Brad isn't here. Brad picked Michael Brantley. I think that's a really good pick. Justin, I'll let you say why you think your guy will be the most improved, because that seems like the most obvious answer to me.
Yan Gomes. I mean, it's hard to have a worse season than he did a year ago. Yeah, and we know he's been a capable hitter before. The BABIP was obviously pretty low, but I don't know. I think Yan Gomes is just too good of a hitter to be as bad as he was last year. I mean, he may not be. I don't think he's going to win a Silver Slugger again like he did in 2014, but I have to believe he's better than he was last year. He's better than he was in 2015. So, I mean, if you can get even 90, 95, 100, league average weighted runs created plus out of him, I don't think that's unrealistic. I mean, he's going to strike out a ton, but I don't know. Maybe he finds 15 homers and manages to hit 230 or 240, which would be an improvement over the last 2 years.
Yeah, and of course, the Indians signed Roberto Perez to a long-term deal today. It's Sunday, opening day for Major League Baseball. But that might put some pressure on Gomes as well. because there's already talk about the Indians possibly trading one of their 3 potential starting major league catchers. And I mean, to me, Gomes would be the top guy you'd want to trade because he's signed for a decent amount of money for a few years down the line if you were going to trade one of the 3. So that could put some pressure on him to be the best out of them and make sure he doesn't get traded.
Yeah, I agree. I think at the trade deadline, I think you're going to see somebody go as a catcher. I mean, somebody almost went last year as a catcher in Francisco. So I think as the Indians are going to be looking for some pitching down the stretch, as every team in contention usually does, I think you're going to see one of those 3 guys go. So I agree.
Well, you picked Bauer.
I did.
You think Bauer's going to be the most improved, and so did John. But you also agreed on some other things. So one of you can do this, and one of you can do the next one.
Well, I mean, I picked Bauer for a number of reasons. I think the first reason is because, quite frankly, outside of Carlos Carrasco, I think he's got the best overall stuff on the starting 5. Now, that's just my opinion. Again, to use a phrase from Joe, the eye test. He's just got electric stuff.
I really don't think that's my phrase.
And I think if he can somehow find a way to hone his skills, focus a little better. I mean, Bauer's problem has always been a complete lack of focus and concentration. And
I'd say that a lot of times he'll come out and throw a lot of balls, or he have like no command at all in the first inning or 2, and then after that happens, then all of a sudden he's paying attention. He'll start pitching like he means it. I don't know why it seems like he should be able to do it from the start, but it doesn't happen that way every time.
He's also another year older now, so I think as we age, we gain a little more perspective on things and become more mature. And he's not that like high draft pick, first round pick guy anymore. He's got a full year under his belt. He's got most of a playoff run, except for the drone problem. But maybe that taught him something too. Look, he was messing around with his personal life a little bit, and when he was hurt and not focused, I mean, granted, it was a simple mistake that he made with the drone, but I think now he might be a little bit wiser. He's got a full season under his belt. He's not, I just think he's probably like Mike said, he does have great stuff. He always has. That's what made him a top draft pick. It's always what's between the ears that has been his issue in the past. And so I'm just thinking maybe, this is the time he can kind of finally put it together. His star isn't going to burn bright forever if he's not going to be successful in the next year or 2. I mean, so maybe there's a little pressure on him to, have a good season. And, I don't think he's got a long-term contract. So, maybe he's kind of pitching. Maybe he's pitching for his own future too.
Yeah, we could see. I think, to me, he had a decent year last year, so he would really have to blow it. I definitely think you're looking at guys like Brantley and Gomes coming back from injuries and, not much playing time to be a most improved. I went with Tyler Naquin I don't think his numbers are going to be better. His offensive numbers. I don't think that's possible. But I think compared to what he did in the World Series, and I think he could have made a lot of just technical improvements and be a better defender and be a better overall hitter this year, I'm hoping.
You're taking an awful gamble there, especially him in his second season.
Yeah, we'll talk about gambles in a minute, Mike.
Okay.
With what you chose for the league ones. Rookie of the Year was split down the middle. Half the people took Bradley Zimmer. This isn't going to be up until June. And the other half going with Yandy Diaz. And you may wonder how 7 people were split in half. And I will say I exaggerate. Hang on that. I'm surprised, Mike, because you usually pick some AA reliever to win Rookie of the Year. And you didn't this year.
No,
You
because
picked Bradley
because of my love affair of backup catchers. For the first time in a long time, I've got a decent backup catcher that I can really turn to. Because Joe, you know my love
Bradley
for backup
Zimmer?
catchers.
What do you?
Well, you know my love for backup catchers. I mean, going back to friggin'
Yeah, but that has
Tim
nothing to do
Raker.
with this. You're crazy.
Did you love Lou Marson?
I love Lou Marson.
Yes, he
Absolutely.
did.
Man. Oh man.
So anyway,
Justin, just
okay,
talk
so-
about Yandy for a second.
Well, I mean,
Mike's rambling.
okay, looking back on my rookie pick, you know, I I made this pick well before Diaz sort of burst onto spring training, and I mean, what the type of spring that Zimmer had was well overshadowed by what Yandy did, and there's no doubt in my mind. I think at some point Zimmer will be up. Whether or not he gets enough at bats to be, quote, productive from a number standpoint, I don't know. But I really like Bradley Zimmer.
Yeah, and anything can happen. I mean, once Kipnis comes back, maybe they do send Yandy down, and maybe he spends more time in AAA than Zimmer does. Maybe Zimmer will spend most of the season in the majors. It's really tough to pick these. I think last year it was split kind of between Mike Clevenger and Tyler Naquin. Because at the beginning of the year, we thought Clevenger would be in the rotation or at least the bullpen for the entire season, and then he didn't pitch that much
Right.
level. So it ended up going to Naquin. All right, so Kate, myself, and Justin all pick Yandy, who, like I said, I think he's got the leg up. So Justin, just do you think he's going to have a Rookie of the Year type season or just a good season? The Indians don't have that many rookies on the roster. Like, is it just going to be a decent year for for a rookie?
I think it'll be fine for a rookie. I think his skills translate pretty well to the major leagues. I mean, any guy, we know that strikeout rates and walk rates are pretty telling signs. That's why everybody freaked out about Zimmer last year and his high strikeout rate. And to Mike's point, I think he got overshadowed in spring training as well because there was an opening at third base. Once Kipnis went down, Diaz had a shot. And unless something catastrophic happened with Naquin and Jackson and Geyer and Chisenhall, Zimmer was never going to make it.
And yeah, Chisenhall already got hurt, and it didn't go straight to Zimmer.
Right, but he had a minor injury. I mean, what happened to Kipnis? Of course, they didn't know at first, but they know for sure he's going to be out a month. I think if Chisenhall was going to be out for a month or two, I think he would have stood a better chance to open the year with the team as well. I mean, not both. I think they would have found a way to keep one rookie just because it's the Indians, but keep one in AAA. But I think Diaz will translate well to the majors because he walks, he makes contact. He's getting better lifting the ball. I think a language barrier might help him out if he can, if someone can teach him some English, maybe.
Would they have to teach him hit more dingers?
Yeah, I mean, seriously, if they're talking about launch angle and other stuff, I mean, I know they have the translator, but that doesn't solve everything. I think if the guy was able to access more in Spanish or English, he'd be able to work on some things for more power. But I actually think Diaz is going to get some down ballot Rookie of the Year votes. I don't know if he's going to finish top 3. If the Indians allow him to play over 100 games, I think he'll get some down ballot Rookie of the Year votes. I don't think anybody's going to overcome Andrew Benintendi because he plays for Boston, and we've been talking about him for forever. But I think he's good enough where he has a talent level to get down ballot Rookie of the Year votes.
All right, so the next one we looked at was reliever and pitcher of the year separately. Pretty much, it's almost a lock down the line if people pick Kluber for the overall pitcher of the year, which I was a little surprised because Andrew Miller, I think, got votes last year for pitcher of the year, and he only had half a season. This year he's going to have a full season. For reliever of the year, Miller did win last year, and he's the favorite again. And we all know why, so we don't really need to go over Miller or Cody Allen, who John and Brad picked. We're familiar with these guys. Mike, why would you pick Zach McAllister?
Well,
it makes no sense.
A couple reasons. Number one, I like to be a little different. And
yeah, a little.
I tell you what, two things really, really, really concern me about Cody Allen and Andrew Miller. And of course, that is the massive amounts of innings that they've put on their arms in the last 2 seasons. Now, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news because I think they've got enough bullpen depth to overcome any, dare I say, inefficiencies in the performance levels of Miller and Allen because of that. So I think you're going to see Zach McAllister get an increased role, particularly in the back end. If you look at his career numbers, he's always had really good FIPS. His ERAs have never really backed up those FIPS, but he's really, in my opinion, he's got a good repertoire for the back end. He's got a live fastball with some really good movement.
And then a dead fastball.
I'm sorry? What?
You said he has a live fastball. He also has a dead fastball, and that's it. Those are his two
It doesn't
pitches.
move. It's straight. Like
I think he's got some late life to his fastball, and I think you really saw that at the end of last year, especially in September, where he pitched very well down the stretch. So I think you'll see more of a increased workload coming from Zach McAllister, especially at the very beginning. So I think he'll use that momentum to really carry himself into a pretty good setup role.
We'll see. I think
a much valued setup role this season coming.
I
up.
definitely think that, seeing as how the postseason went last year, I think Francona is really going to manage those innings, not like he did in 2013 and 2014, where he was really burning guys out. He's got the guys he trusts, and I don't think that list includes McAllister. I think he's going to use Boone Logan instead of Miller a lot early on, and he's going to use Dan Otero and Brian Shaw when he can early on for right-handers. I don't think he's going to get deep enough to be putting McAllister in pivotal situations, or Sean Armstrong. I think those two guys are going to be at the bottom.
Well, the good news is the offense is so good, and they're going to score so many runs, in my opinion, that you're not going to have to hold on, quote unquote, to a lot of leads.
And each starting pitcher is going to throw 8 innings every game, so they'll be trying to get all these guys work. Nothing. Okay, this is a really tough crowd here. Top hitter, and MVP kind of goes with this too, because MVP includes pitching, defense, and hitting, but I think most people just threw out all the pitchers for MVP on our particular voting. And we're just looking at the hitting and defense. I was going to skip defense because everyone picked Lindor except for Mike, who picked Gomes, and I don't have a problem with that. Gomes is a good defender, but Lindor's going to win again if he plays 130 games or more. Hitting is really split across the board. John and Brad probably had the most interesting pick. So you want to explain that, John? Who the top hitter will be this year?
Francisco Lindor. I mean, what's not to like about this guy? I think, he's going to hit over 300, 310, 320-ish. I think he's probably going to have a little more power too. I can see him getting up to 15 to 20 home runs. And, if he's batting second or third, he's going to score a ton of runs with a healthy Brantley and Encarnacion hitting behind him. I just think this guy is just ready to be a superstar. I mean, I think people are going to talk about him all across the league. I don't think he's just going to be the Indians hitter. I think, well, I'll kind of jump ahead here a little bit, but I think he's got a shot to win like the American League MVP, to be honest with you. I just see him, the way he performed in the WBC and the way he just stepped up in the playoffs last year. I think he's going to break out even more than he has. I think the sky's the limit for this guy. He could be the game's next superstar.
Yeah, and I think with the part of that goes in talking about team MVP when pretty much everybody picked Lindor for that. And I think the reasoning behind that is because you're adding in his defense and base running. And when you do that now, especially with all the extra metrics we have to look at defense, so you can physically see the great plays, but then you can also look at the defensive metrics that say he's the best defensive player in baseball or the second best behind like Kevin Kiermaier. He's up there is the best defensive player. So to add in a bat to that, it's easy to see that he could be a potential MVP candidate. The offense, though, I don't think anyone was really expecting it to be quite as good as it was last year, and I don't know if anyone I guess you are thinking he's going to repeat that or even improve upon what he did last season.
Yeah, I think he's going to be even better. I really do. I mean, this is going to be his third year, you know, in the league. Last year was his first full season. Everybody thought, oh, we would have the sophomore slump last year, and what did he do? He got better. I mean, I just think he's still so young. He hasn't even hit his prime yet. I just think this guy is going to be even better this year.
Right.
Now,
To
last year's.
Oh, yeah, real quick, I wanted to touch on Lindor's power, too. I mean, don't underestimate his power potential. I mean, he hit 15 home runs last year, which he improved upon that by, I don't know how many he hit in 15. I think it was like 10 or 11, might have been 12. But he's got tremendous power potential, too. He's increasing his fly ball rate every single season, and he's getting bigger, he's getting stronger, and he's learning the pitching in the American League a lot better too. So don't underestimate his power potential too. I think, I mean, I would not be surprised if he hits 20 or more dingers this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always kind of we've always had him like John said, a 15 to 20 guy. Maybe not always, but I mean that kind of seemed like where he was going. The number one comp I've always heard for Lindor since he was in Double-A, maybe even earlier that is Roberto Alomar. And Alomar would regularly, I mean, he would come out there and hit 15 to 20 home runs and play Gold Glove defense, and that it still seems like the best comp that there is.
There were a couple
Robinson
Cano
base running
comparisons too. When he was in Double-A, there were a couple guys.
Cano's got more power though. I see him as a different type of hitter. So the rest of us, now, this kind of surprised me. Last year, I think I voted for Jose Ramirez as the top hitter, and according to Fangraphs, Jose Ramirez was the top hitter on the Indians, but Santana won it. This year, nobody picked Santana. I was expecting with guys like Justin and Gavin for Ramirez to be the favorite going into this season, but he wasn't. Mike was the only person who picked Ramirez. J-Ram from the wherever he's from, the DR, I guess. So
yep.
Mike,
talking about Jose
on Ramirez.
Hey, Jose. Yeah. What an awesome approach Jose Ramirez has. And, I didn't, seeing him come through the system and hearing Justin talk about how good he was going to be, I didn't think that he was going to be as good of a hitter as he was last season. And that was just more than a breakout.
Well, and we saw him for a month and then most of a year, and he wasn't that good of a hitter.
No, he really wasn't.
So and the Indians, I mean, it's almost like what Oprah handing out extensions. You get an extension, you get an extension. They've got. I thought they just locked up Ramirez after that one. She hands out cars, right? No,
I thought just books. Anyway, go on.
No, I think she gave away cars once. Their trips to Australia. I don't watch these shows. I just see them on other things. Anyway, so the Indians obviously believe in him, or else they wouldn't have given him guaranteed money. Like off a 1 year to give a guy guaranteed money, that's a risk, and the Indians don't usually take risks like that. But so they believe he's going to repeat it, maybe more than I do. I don't feel like he's going to hit 315 again and crush it as well as he did last year. But it'll be interesting, and he could be the top hitter on the team by the end of the year if he plays like he did last year.
Yeah, I think he's. I mean, his RBI potential is going to be really high as well because of simply who's hitting in front of him. I mean, my gosh, you look at those on-base machines at the top of the order, and then you've got Jose Ramirez. I mean, the dude could knock in 130 plus RBIs this year.
And he'll be just fine because
and Bastian,
he doesn't strike out and puts, his line drive rates have been pretty good, and it's not like his fly ball rate was kind of crazy either. I mean, it was a pretty stable set of numbers. So I mean, he may not slug in the mid 440s again or whatever it was, 480s, but he's still going to probably give you, a 300, 340, 400, with solid defense wherever you put him. So that's, even though we're talking about hitters here, but if he doesn't hit 10 homers and steal 20 bases and hit 300, I'd be surprised.
Okay, yeah, and Bastian released the first 5 in the Indians lineup, and I think this might not be a daily thing, but it'll be a pretty daily thing. Santana, Lindor, Brantley, Encarnacion, and Ramirez. So he is hitting after all those guys. I mean, that's a pretty rough top 5. And again, of course, this is going to lead to all the people complaining that Santana doesn't have RBIs. He needs more ribbies hitting out of the 1 hole. But yeah, Ramirez could definitely stack up quite a few of those meaningless numbers. The rest of us all went with Encarnacion. Justin, Kate, Gavin, me. Maybe this is just a jump on the new guy thing, because I think a bunch of people picked Mike Napoli last year, at least to lead in home runs and RBI, and of course he did do those things. But Justin, you think? I mean, is he going to repeat last year? Last year he had an incredible season, but he's pretty old already. How are you looking at him to step up, maintain, drop from last year? What is your thinking in him being top hitter?
I'm a little concerned more than I now before I made those picks, just because if you look at the strikeouts he had in the spring, I mean, he struck out a lot. I think it was like a 40% K rate. I don't expect him to have a 40% K rate in the regular season. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the 20s, which 19 last year was the highest he's ever had. That's just what happens when these guys get older. You have old man skills, you strike out more. I mean, when they signed Nick Swisher, this will be the first and last time we talk about Nick Swisher, I hope, but I thought he'd be great because he was a guy who walked a lot, and those are skills that usually translate well as you get older. But Encarnacion still makes a fair amount of contact. His swinging strike rate was the same last year as it was in 2015. And I think his weighted runs created plus dropped 20 last year, just mainly because of the strikeouts. But he's not going to strike out as much as Napoli did last year. He's going to walk more than Napoli did. He makes more contact than Napoli overall. And he's definitely going to hit 30 home runs. I would be really stunned if he doesn't hit 30 home runs. So I think that's going to make him, if Napoli didn't strike out at the rate he did last year, I think he's probably closer to being hitter of the year as Ramirez was. So 30 home runs, 100 RBIs.
And really that September killed Napoli. I mean, he was terrible for a full month.
And that won't
Ramirez
be the
really never had it.
He's played full seasons.
Yeah, Encarnacion. Yeah, Napoli hit record highs, because he was a catcher before he moved to first base, and he was a platoon guy. So he was hitting career highs in at-bats and games played, and Encarnacion played in like 155 games last year or something. Where's my ombudsman? No? Mr. Fake News?
What about it?
He's not going to look it up. I was asking you to look up how many.
I'm done fact checking.
Okay. Fine. All right. And then, of course, for MVP, like I already said, Lindor was pretty much a straight across the board. Brad went with Encarnacion. Kind of hard being the DH to win that MVP, but we'll see. And Mike went with Bauer because he likes to be difficult.
Right.
He also went with Bauer. He was the only person not to pick Kluber, or I picked Salazar for Pitcher of the Year. And then everybody picked Lindor for All-Star because that's easy, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's
he's pretty much a shoo at this point.
Yeah, Francisco Lindor can do it all, as John was saying earlier. But let me go back to MVP real quick, and let me just sort of clarify my choice of Trevor Bauer. I know it sounds kind of crazy because you've got Kluber, you've got Carrasco, you've got Salazar, pretty much 1, 2, 3. And God forbid if any one of those guys either A, doesn't perform or gets hurt, you've got 2 other guys to step up and sort of be number 1 potential type starters on the team. I get that. I understand that. But to have that 3rd or 4th guy to anchor that rotation is very, very, very valuable, in my opinion. You have to have it's good to have 2 or 3 guys at the top of the rotation, but to have that 3rd or 4th guy anchor it sort of is, in my opinion, very important. Because
Now, did you read the Did you read the article I put out the other day, Mike?
No, I didn't.
Of course not. I did something on. Essentially, it was I went back the last 30 starts for each of the Indians starters and took a look at their game scores across those 30 starts and their maxes and their mins and their ups and downs and that type of thing. And obviously, the three guys at the top are incredible and they're on another level. And what I found is while Tomlin and Bauer have similar stats, because Tomlin has been more even. Like his highs haven't been as high, his lows haven't been as low as Bauer's. He's a better four-man for the Indians than Bauer is. But I mean, Bauer's highs are higher. So if he does pitch to that level, I could see him being a much better pitcher than Tomlin. I can't see him being better than Salazar, Kluber, or Carrasco.
No, and I guess I kind of.
But you picked him as MVP anyway.
I kind of see the MVP title is a little bit different than other people.
Yeah, you see it as like the fourth or fifth best player on the team, not the first best.
Sure, why not?
All right, let's move on to the league stuff. We don't need to do all. The only one we picked the full standings for was the Central, because we used to do the whole league and we got everything wrong every single time, and there was no point to that. So we just do the Central now because it's a little easier. The vast majority of people, meaning every single person except Mike, went Indians, Tigers, Royals, Twins, White Sox. Okay, everyone except Mike and Gavin. Everybody went Indians, Tigers, Royals. Gavin switched the White Sox and Twins. Mike switched everything around. And I feel like he did this because he wanted more airtime. You really think the Twins are better than...
Nobody loves hearing me talk.
You put the Tigers last.
I didn't.
You think the Tigers are the worst team in the AL Central?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you...
They had the Rookie of the Year winner. They had the guy who should have won the Cy Young. They've got
they
Miguel Cabrera, who can still win.
They held a players-only meeting on the third day of spring training. I think their sort of window, quote-unquote, of opportunity ended in Atlanta last year. I mean, they've got no resemblance of a bullpen whatsoever. And I think they're going to blow a lot of leads, and I think that's going to be crushing for them emotionally early on. I think it's going to be a long season in the Motor City.
All right. Well, that's the Tiger. John, you got to pick a team. Just do a quick synopsis.
Well, I think
maybe the Royals. You have them.
Yeah, the Royals. I think they'll hang in there for a while. They still have some talent. I mean, their problem is a lot of their guys could be free agents at the end of the year. So, if they're still in it, maybe they keep those guys. But if they're kind of just lingering around and it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to go forward and make the playoffs, get a wild card, or even the division, which I really doubt they even have much of a chance for. But you could see them like selling off a lot of guys at the trading deadline. Hosmer, for example, just, I just see them as a middle of the pack team because, I mean, they have the talent, but you just don't know if they're going to be in it to keep all their guys.
Yeah, it's a little like the NL Central in a way, where you've got these middle-level teams. Detroit and Kansas City are kind of like the Cardinals and Pirates, where they've got a shot maybe, but they're nowhere near as good as the Cubs. So in the AL Central, these teams are decent. They're not terrible. They're probably equivalent to Seattle and better than Oakland. I mean, like they're equal to these Baltimores and Torontos, like those mid-level teams, but they're just not going to beat the Indians this year. There's no way.
Yeah, and their starting pitching is just it's not good. I mean, and
I still feel bad about Yordano Ventura dying. I mean, it's so terrible when a player dies that young, especially who is that talented, and it just decimates the team. I just can't believe that they can recover from that.
I agree. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, maybe it inspires them the whole year, and who knows? But I kind of see it the other way. I kind of see it as, well, they lost their number one starter. I mean, did they really replace him? No, they traded their closer, and they got a decent player back, but I just don't see them really being a serious threat to win the division. But again, they could be in the playoff hunt as a wild card, but I'm not really. I don't know. I don't have a lot of hopes for them.
Yeah, and I like Joe Lucia, who writes for Outside Corner and Awful Announcing and all that. He posted his predictions today, and his off the wall whatever bonus prediction was that the Royals would contend through July, and they wouldn't trade off any of their free agents, and then they would end up finishing 5 games out of any playoff spot, and they would just lose all their guys and make it a wasted season, which I could very well see happening. They should have blown it up like the White Sox did.
Yeah, they're going to blow it up at some point.
Justin. Well, but they might wait too late. That's what I said. Justin, the White Sox, do they have any chance, or should they just dump Quintana now and Robertson and move on?
They should dump everybody that's willing to give them anything back for. I mean, Quintana is obviously their best bet, but Todd Frazier might net something. David Robertson will net something. Nate Jones will be a hot target after they move Robertson, even maybe before. Nate Jones is really good. And I don't know, Melky Cabrera. I doubt they'll trade Jose Abreu. Melky Cabrera is another one. After that, I don't think they have much left to trade. But if they're going to do this rebuild, yeah, they should just go ahead and find takers for all these guys, get what they can back. I mean, not that they need to, give sweet deals out, but I mean, those are guys who all have trade value. It's just a matter of waiting for a team to need them.
Yeah, and they actually have a
decent.
They actually have a decent bullpen too. And I've always said, like, there was a year the Indians had a great bullpen, but a terrible rotation. I can't remember when that was. It was sometime in the last decade.
The bullpen mafia days.
It might have been like it might have been like 2008, 2009, somewhere around there, where the bullpen was really good and they just couldn't get them a lead. And a great closer and a great bullpen is such a luxury. Like, and if you're not a team that's getting leads to the bullpen, you can't afford to have that luxury, and you should be trying to jettison all those guys and get as much value in return. Relievers are worth so much right now that they've already got 2 of the top prospects in baseball during the offseason. So to get more than that, they could be a really scary team in a couple of years. I just don't see how they could possibly come anywhere but last, losing Chris Sale.
Twins are worse. The Twins will finish in last place because the Twins the rotation is pitiful. Like, Irvin Santana is pretty good. Jose Barrio should be better. And after that, it's Phil Hughes, and I don't even know. So the Twins will be worse.
Well, you actually picked the White Sox to finish in last.
Did I? Oh, that's just because I think they're going to trade more people. I figured by July they'll have gutted the rest of their team. Meanwhile, Minnesota's actually got some prospects to bring up at some point. Even the White Sox are further away than the Twins. I just did that for the.
Yeah. Well, they have. I bet Moncada comes up this year, especially if they trade Frazier.
Yeah,
they've got that in-house.
But you won't see. You'll probably see Giolito, but you won't see Kopech, and you won't see Basabe and all those guys. You'll probably see just Giolito.
Yeah, they're a couple of years away.
Yeah.
Into the division winners, obviously we all pick Cleveland to win the Central because we're homers. And I mean, I've been picking Cleveland every year we've done this, but some other people haven't because they're not as homer as I am. But even nationally, pretty much everyone's picking the Indians to win the division, and everyone's picking Boston to win the East. And of course, we all picked Boston to win the East. The interesting stuff comes mostly in the wild card. Because we did have some split on the division winners for the West, but everybody has Texas in, and everybody except Kate had Houston in too. So one way or the other, between the West and the wild card, we're expecting both Texas and Houston again. I picked 3 West teams. I think Seattle has a chance to get that other wild card. They've really underperformed the last couple of years. I think they can come back and get it. Mike didn't pick Texas either. He picked just Houston. You've got 2 Eastern teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't even know that they're the best.
I'm kind of shocked that you left the Toronto Blue Jays out, considering what good of a team that they have. And the Seattle Mariners.
Well, I think they got worse. from last year. I think they're not as good as they were last year. So
yeah, I completely agree. There's no doubt about it. I mean, losing their best hitter in Encarnacion was tough. But anyway, getting back to the Seattle Mariners, I mean, I don't get what this whole hype around the Seattle Mariners and them being, quote, a surprise team out of the West is. I mean, who do they have in that rotation besides?
The pitching's garbage, Mike. You're right. The pitching's garbage.
It's terrible. And if you look at the offense,
they're gonna have to hit their way out of it and hope that. I mean, Felix is there still.
Okay,
he's not Felix anymore though.
The Taijuan Walker deal was really stupid. I mean, whenever you see someone complimenting the Diamondbacks for a good deal, you know you made a mistake. So the Segura for Walker thing was a mistake, I think, for them, but might not make it. I had a hard time picking that second wild card. Baltimore should be good. Kate was the only person to pick Baltimore. I think New York is going to be decent, and John and Gavin both picked New York.
Yeah.
You want to defend that one, John?
Yeah, go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, the Yankees bullpen I really like, and I think I just did that because I really hate the Yankees, and I always expect them to make the playoffs. So I figured they'd throw them in there, and then if they aren't, I'd be happy about it. But I mean, I mean they've got some young guys. I think they've done a decent job rebuilding on the fly. So I think they can be a contender. That's about all I got for the Yankees. I just
okay.
I don't really like the Yankees, well,
I guess the surprise one for Mike was the Rays. Because if I was going to say the East, I would say Boston's way above everybody, and then Toronto and Baltimore are kind of equal, and then Tampa Bay and New York are kind of equal.
Well, as I was going
to say, you have them as the second best team.
Yeah, as I was going to say before I rudely interrupted John, was that it was fun for me trying to pick the wild card teams this year because if you looked up and down the board, I mean, that's what, in my opinion, I think baseball is in the middle of its golden age for a wide variety of reasons. But one of them is the addition of that extra wild card, which I think makes regular season a lot more fun. And I was sitting there looking, and I mean, literally all but probably 5 teams in the league, in my opinion, have a legitimate shot of winning one of the wild cards. And I really like Tampa Bay. If you look at their starting pitching with Archer, Odorizzi, Cobb, I think Brad Snell, anchoring that rotation. And they've got some really good young talent in Beckham, Kiermaier, who a lot of people don't realize.
They have a great defense and great pitching, which has always been your cornerstone.
Right.
And you can't disagree with that. That's what the Indians do too. They built this team around great defense and great pitching, and then they just improved the offense this offseason.
Right.
All right, so that's the AL. We don't focus that much on the NL because I don't watch very many NL games. I'll see a couple Diamondbacks games. I watch the Reds during spring training. They are absolutely horrendous. They actually have a decent offense, but man, is their pitching and defense just terrible. You don't want to see this. So I'll just go over these quick. In the West, everyone has the Dodgers except Brad, who had the Giants. Everybody has the Cubs in the Central, and only 2 people picked another team out of the Central. Kate and myself picked the Cardinals as a wild card team. In the East, that's the contended one, as Washington and New York are pretty evenly split. And again, just like Houston and Texas, we pretty much all picked one of those teams to make it one way or the other, except Kate didn't have Washington in there, and Gavin didn't have the Mets. The craziest thing I'm seeing on here, and the only one I want really anyone to talk about, is Justin. How do you have Arizona getting a wild card?
Really? I don't know. It was hard to decide.
Is that a typo?
No, actually. And I changed it the last minute because I was thinking about it more. And actually, I would have changed my AL wildcard pick to the Rays had I thought it over a little more. Because I like the Rays pitching a little bit more, or their bullpen a little bit more. I don't know. The Diamondbacks, they're going to get A.J. Pollock back. They have like the fourth best player in baseball or fifth, Paul Goldschmidt. I mean, he's criminally underrated. I keep saying that. And I actually think their pitching rotation is going to be fine. I think Greinke will be okay. I don't think he's going to be, you know, as good as he was at the Dodgers. He'll be okay. I'm going to buy into the Taijuan Walker thing. I know he's done it a couple years in a row where he's looked really awesome in the spring and then couldn't figure anything out in the regular season. I like that pitching rotation. I think they're going to be good enough. They got to figure out something in the bullpen. I have no idea what's going to happen with that bullpen right now. I mean, Andrew Chafin just gave a home run to Madison Bumgarner, so there's that.
Yeah, I was about to say, as we're talking to this, and you're talking about how that's the Giants' standings, they've given up 2 home runs to Madison Bumgarner.
Right. Madison Bumgarner doesn't count because he's Madison Bumgarner, but I don't know. I think they have enough. I think
He's
they've got
Babe
enough
Ruth,
interesting
apparently.
pieces. Right? Yeah, he's the American Ohtani. Someone got mad about that. I don't know. I think their pitching is good enough. I think they'll figure it out. They actually have a competent front office for a change. I think their manager situation is a lot better. I think they'll squeak in. I think they'll take advantage of the fact that the AL East is garbage outside of Washington and the Mets. The Cubs are going to slaughter everybody in the Central except for the Cardinals. And I think Colorado's pitching still sucks. It's an odd year, so the Giants aren't going to be any good. And the Dodgers are winning that division.
I like the voodoo coming into your into your decision making. I mean, if it's an odd year, then why did the Reds cut Ryan Rayburn?
Because the Reds are horrible.
How does that make
so
any
there you
sense?
go.
They're tanking for.
They need a tank. They would have made him too good.
I guess that is it. Okay, so with everything we've got, all those playoff teams for the NL champ, surprisingly, only Justin and myself picked the Cubs to repeat. That they are by far the best team. Last year in like June, a friend of mine went to Vegas and asked if I wanted to put money on the Indians. And I said I asked him what the odds were, and he gave them to me. And I was like, I don't really like those odds to win the World Series, but I'll take them to win the AL championship because I'm afraid of the Cubs. And I would say pretty much the same thing this year. But everybody else picked somebody else. The Dodgers, Mike, John, Gavin all went with the Dodgers. Brad went with San Francisco. And Kate picked the Mets. I'd love to hear the Mets argument, but John, you want to give your Dodgers?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers. I mean, you can see, and you know, last year he almost carried them past the Cubs in the playoffs. I just think, you know, it's difficult to repeat in sports, and you know, I know the Cubs are loaded, but you know, the Dodgers took them as far as anybody else in the National League did, and I just think, you know, Clayton Kershaw is, you know, when it's all said and done, he's going to be a legend from this time period. We're going to look back at him like people look back at Koufax, and I just think he's going to get his team to the World Series this year, and you know, I just feel like it's their year. I thought it was actually going to be their year last year too, but it wasn't. But it was close. So I think they're going to get over the hump, and I just don't think the Cubs are going to be quite as good. It'll be interesting to see with the Cubs now that they've actually won the World Series, what it'll be like to say, "Oh, we haven't won the World Series in 108 years." How do they handle their
it didn't
success?
really hurt the Red Sox. The Red Sox came back and won it 3 years later. I guess they didn't immediately win it again, but they won it two more times after that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the year afterward, I mean, it's difficult, you know. I mean, you don't see a lot of repeat champions, so I just feel like, you know, this is going to be the Dodgers' year to make it to the World Series.
Yeah, obviously there's a high probability high variability in the postseason. You play a short series or even a long series, and not necessarily the best team is going to win each time. I mean, even looking back at the World Series, you could say if any number of things had been slightly different, the Indians probably would have won that in 5 games or 6 games, and it wouldn't have even had to go to 7. But I mean, it works out a lot of different ways. But I just think the Cubs didn't lose anybody, and they got Wade Davis, and they got Schwarber. It's going to be tough to mess around with that again.
It is, and I wouldn't be shocked if they do repeat as NL champs. I mean, it kind of was a hard pick for me to pick the Dodgers there, but like I said, I think Kershaw just, I just think it's his time to get to the World Series.
Nationally, I think I've seen mostly people picking the Cubs and the Dodgers. In the AL, most people are picking the Red Sox because you put a great team together on paper, and that's what everyone loves. They picked up Sale. They picked up Mitch Moreland, which I guess matters. That's going to be the biggest drop off for me, is him compared to Ortiz. But,
yeah, I agree with that. I think they're really going to miss Big Papi. Not only his bat, but geez, that guy was the leader of the team, and he was still productive.
But they also have Betts. Yeah, Betts and Benintendi and
they do
Bogarts and the rest of the people who start with B.
Yeah, they do.
I definitely see Boston going.
Yeah, he was the heart and soul, I feel, and it's not like they're not going to be able to have other guys step up. I just think that having him gone will hurt them a little bit more than, say, adding a Mitch Moreland and having some other guys just step up to the plate. I think they will miss him more than people probably realize.
And banking.
Plus, he was keeping all the guys juiced. Oh.
Banking, yeah, injecting them in their rear ends. He learned that from Roger Clemens, probably. All right, so
I'm ignoring your pick, Mike.
Gavin
picked Boston for the AL.
Somebody can fact check me on this one, but Jason Stark put out a tweet sometime in spring training about National League teams that have repeated. I think there's only been 2 in the past 100 or something crazy like that. National League
talking about actually winning the World Series? Because I think there have been more that have got there. We're not talking about winning necessarily, just getting back. And I've been kind of looking into it. I got to do a little more research on it. But the idea of having the same 2 teams back to back, and one of those teams not being the Yankees, is pretty crazy. Because during the 50s, the 40s and 50s, every year that the Indians didn't go to the World Series for about 20 years, the Yankees did. And a lot of those years, it was a New York World Series. It was either the Giants or the Dodgers. And then even after the Giants went to San Francisco, it was still a lot of Giants, Yankees, Dodgers, Yankees stuff going on for a while. Those were really powerhouses during that era. But outside of that era, there really haven't been many times where the same 2 teams played twice. In fact, I'll have to look it up to see if it's ever really happened. Definitely not in a really long time.
I know the 77 and 78 World Series was both Yankees versus Dodgers.
Yeah, and it's been those teams, like the Yankees and Dodgers. And I think early on it may have happened more often as well. Generally, again, with the Yankees, they've won 26. They've been there more than anyone else. It's happened a lot. But I think it really could happen with Indians, Cubs, and all of us except for Mike and Gavin picked the Indians to repeat as AL champs. And Mike picked Houston because he wants to be different.
Well, and let me just say this too about this Indians team. This is just my opinion. I think this is a more complete team than any of those teams in the 1990s ever were. Because of the pitching, if you look at
Michael Martinez,
if you take into account everything, the pitching, a future Hall of Fame manager, if you take everything in comparison, this is a much better team than those 90s teams. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this Indians team is going to win 100-plus games this year. They've got the depth, they've got the talent, and they've got the drive.
Well, that's the last thing I was going to ask you.
Right. And so
you're going to steal
my pick.
So you think Houston's going to beat them in the ALCS?
I don't like repeat winners in baseball. I don't. And I hope the Indians prove me wrong. As an Indians fan, I hope they prove me wrong. I think it's going to be a fun summer. But I think if you take into account everything, just the pure excitement of everything that happened last year. You get to Game 7 of the World Series. You pretty much had what, according to everybody, is the most talented roster in baseball, which I would disagree with in the Chicago Cubs. I think the Indians are much more talented than the Cubs are. You take them to Game 7 of the World Series to extra innings, and
Well, you take out Carrasco and you take out Brantley, and I think, you take out Salazar, and then the Cubs are the more talented roster. But you add those guys back in, and I think the Indians do have the best roster in baseball this year.
And the Indians very well could have, and should have beat them in the World Series last year. Now, that has sort of an anticlimactic type of theater to it, if you will, because it's almost like, and that's why I expect the Indians to start off slow. I think they're going to start off pretty slow in April, and you're going to have everybody freaking out on Twitter. But they're going to start off
like
pretty
the Cavs.
slow. Yeah, exactly. It's a good example. They're going to start off pretty slow, just because of that hangover effect. But then I think they're really going to kick it into gear once the season once the season gets going in the hot summer months. But don't get me wrong. This Indians team is much more talented than the Cubs, much more talented than any other team in baseball. And I think they win 100+ games this year. The postseason, the reason why I picked Houston, not because I like them more than the Indians, I just don't like repeat winners in baseball. So,
yeah.
I mean,
and that's why you picked the Dodgers.
Call me a jerk, call me whatever you want. I just don't like repeat winners.
I call you lots of things. Okay, and then for our World Series champion picks, John, myself, Kate, and Brad all went the homer route with the Cleveland Indians. Gavin and Mike picked the Dodgers, and Justin is an asshole.
I hate this.
I'd like to just leave that at that.
Fine. We can leave it there. That's
Quick.
fine. That's the only explanation.
Quick, every year we do this, and we just name a number. I think last year my number was 88, and I was well under. I'm going to go first this time because I don't want someone to steal mine. And I'm going to say the Indians win 106 games this year.
Oh, my.
Just to put it way out there because craziness. And I think, like what they did against Detroit last year, I think they do that against Chicago and Minnesota this year. Just utterly dominate them. And you get all those bonus wins, and that's how the Cubs did it last year. And I think the Indians are going to do the same thing this time.
Yeah, I agree.
Plus, they play the Diamondbacks.
I'm going to say 105. Actually, no, I'm gonna go one more above you, just to be an asshole. I'm gonna say 107. Realistically,
okay, well, now I think I'm gonna be right.
I mean, I'm not.
If you said 105, I thought.
Yeah, I'm not going for shock value there. I think the Indians are that talented that 100+ games winning them. I think it's well within their reach.
John,
I'm not going that high. No way. I mean,
I'm
gonna be a lot more conservative. I'm gonna stick with like 90. They won 94 last year or 93. I'm trying to remember.
94, but they had another game they didn't play in 161.
Okay, I'll say they'll win 95 because again,
That's not that conservative, but
well, compared to you guys, I mean 107. That's
yeah.
Wow. I just can't see that happening. I mean, the part that always worries me is injuries, and if they were to lose Kluber or Encarnacion or somebody for an extended period of time, I just don't think they're. I mean, all things considered, if they they have a great healthy year and the rotation is great and guys perform like they should, well, okay, I would be a lot more realistically able to predict 105 wins, but injuries are such an important part of the game that I don't think everything's gonna click and be as perfect as it was last year. I know they added some talent for sure with Encarnacion and Boone Logan and Brantley's back, but I just I think that the chances of them winning more than 100 game aren't realistic in my opinion. So I think 95's a better number for me.
Well, here, let me.
And again,
I've got to leave early, so I'm going to finish with this. But John, just to touch on what you were saying, and I get your conservatism. I do. I mean, you're talking to a guy that picked them to win the World Series. But if you look at just their pure depth at every single position, I think they can overcome an injury. I mean, it's crazy to think that, okay, in the worst case scenario, if they lose Corey Kluber for any length of time, or if they lose Carrasco, or if they lose Salazar, I mean, they've got Kluber. I mean, they've got 2, 3, 4 other guys in that rotation that can step up. The same in the bullpen. What if what if Cody Allen goes down with an injury, or Andrew Miller? Then they've got the other one to close games out. If you look at position by position, I mean, the outfield, like Justin was touching base upon earlier in our conversation, they've got so much better outfield depth than they had last year. It's just unbelievable. I mean, they've got Eric Gonzalez ready to be called up in case they need another infielder. You got Bradley Zimmer getting ready to be called up in case they need an extra outfielder. I mean, their depth on this team is just unbelievable. I think this is one of the few teams that can overcome any catastrophic injury, as they proved in the postseason last year.
Yeah,
All right,
I
Justin,
agree
you got
with
a
that.
number? Oh,
Go ahead, Justin.
Justin? Justin fell asleep.
I mean, do you get what I'm saying,
He's
John?
hosting, so-
Like they've got so much depth that they can overcome any of those injuries.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think 95 games is still a lot. I mean, when you're getting into the
Oh,
105.
no, you're not being...
Yeah, when you're getting up to 105,
I-
107, I mean, that means they're winning 2 out of every 3 games almost. I just don't know if
and you're
that's
still taking
going to happen.
You're still taking the over on, like, I think Vegas has him at like 91 or 92.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're still taking the over on that.
I think I'm just a little more realistic, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, probably. And I'll say the reason I did it, and I said 88 would win the Central last year because I thought the Central was going to be so tough and all these teams were going to be competing equally, and then the Indians ended up running away with it. I think this year it's not going to be tough at all. And maybe I'm backwards again. Maybe it will be tough. Maybe the Twins rookies will be great. They've got some fun guys in Minnesota that could be decent players. Sano and Rosario and those guys that were great as rookies, and then they had a down year last year. Maybe they'll be back and be great again. And if they play well, and if the White Sox can do something, then it will be more like 90 to 95 games. I just think those teams are going to be terrible.
Yeah, another thing too is, think if the other teams are really that bad, they could still win the division probably by winning 90 games. And so do you need to press the button full throttle the entire year and try to just maybe you give guys a couple extra days off here and there just because you're really you kind of feel like you're going to get into the playoffs, so maybe you want to prioritize health over winning maybe a game or two.
Oh, I think they will. I still think they'll win those games.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you don't pitch Andrew Miller all the time in September because you wrapped up the division on September 8th. So you're not going to put him in all these high pressure situations in September just to try to win games. So I just feel like I think they're talented enough to win more than 100 games. I just don't think they're actually going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Justin, do you have a number now?
Yes, I will. I was taking that extra time to figure out what number I wanted to go with. I'll be an asshole again, and I'll say 99. They'll finish 1 win away from 100. That's still obviously an improvement last year. And I think they actually play 162 games this year.
Maybe.
They might.
Although if they win
They won't need
99,
them all.
they might not, and they have a rain out, they might not have to.
They won't need them all. They won't need them all this year. It'll be. I think they're going to win the division by 10 games actually, but I think they're only going to win.
At least
They're going to win 99. Yeah, they're going to win 99 games. Maybe 20 games. I don't know if any of their team in the division is going to finish with more than 83, 84 wins. So they could easily win the division by 10 to 15 games, if not more.
Yeah.
I'll
say
I agree with that for sure.
My closing point would be I think this is the first year that I can remember since the 1990s where winning the Central Division is not the goal going into the season. It seems like every year that's the goal. It's win the Central and then do what you can after that. And this year the goal is to win a World Series. Winning a Central is almost like taken as a given. Like that's
It does feel like
maybe
the
the window's
90s.
open. Yeah, the window's open for a couple more years after this, probably. But you don't want to. This year, it's the only year you're going to have Santana and Encarnacion in the same lineup. You got Brantley back and healthy, hopefully. You've got three ace starters that are all healthy at the moment. Like, this seems to be the year for the window, and you have to win this year. And I think if they do win the World Series, that immediately this becomes the greatest in Indians history. Because no other team, no team in Indians history has ever made it to back-to-back World Series. Most of them didn't even come close. Closest you could say is like the Indians in 1919 to 1920, but they didn't get there in 1919. You know, like, so that a lot of times they'll be close. In the 90s, they made it and skip a year. But I think this team could surpass all those if they win the World Series this year.
I agree with that. And I think too, it's so nice to actually think, wow, the goal is to win the World Series. I mean, this is what it's what I've been waiting for my whole life. This is the time. I think they're primed, they're loaded, they've got the depth, they've got everything they need to get out to do it. The problem in the 90s, they didn't have necessarily the number one starter stud guy they could depend on in a short series, 7 or 5 game series. Now
they didn't have anyone close to the starters they have now.
Yeah. I mean, they've got it all. They've got the formula. I mean, they got a great bullpen, a loaded juggernaut offense. I mean, I just don't see how they don't win it.
Yeah, the defense is better too. So if they don't win the Central, it would be one of the biggest disappointments.
Oh, I'd be so mad.
Franchise history. And if they don't win the AL, it would be a disappointment. They've got to win the AL and they've got to win the World Series. Like that's
just winning the
only way I'm looking at it.
Getting there is not enough next year or this year. You got to win it all. It's World Series or bust for me.
Yeah, and Mike left already. You got a closing comment, Justin?
Sure. I'll say the Indians actually could have won a World Series in '97 if Terry Francona was their manager, because Francona would have went with a veteran over Wright, and he would have brought Wright out of the bullpen. So Nagy would have pitched a pretty good game, and Wright would have shut him down out of the bullpen, like a dominant reliever, like he could have been. I'll just annoy everybody with that and make everyone feel depressed. That
really is annoying.
Well, I don't. Yeah, it's not gonna. It doesn't change anything to me.
But yeah, I agree. This is the best team. I think. I don't know if it's necessarily the best team I think I've seen in my lifetime. I don't know. I think those 90s teams were really good. I think balanced is the better word. I still contend that 05.
I mean, if you look at, they don't have two sluggers like Manny Ramirez and Albert Bell in the lineup at the same time, or especially not three with Tommy. But I think first thing, I think Lindor is already better than Omar ever was.
Yes, absolutely.
In every facet of the game. And I think that'll bug some people. But even like some people are already they're talking about Omar's going to be in the Hall of Fame next year, or is up for the Hall of Fame next year. And the national writers immediately go, yeah, right. He's one of the worst hitters, of his era. He can't get in. Well, Lindor is not one of the worst hitters of his era. And I think he's at least equal defensively. So
he's better.
You're talking about better up the middle. They never had a second baseman after Baerga.
Robbie Alomar didn't count?
Decent. Well, no, but he never made it to the World Series.
Oh,
that was 98 on. He never made it to the World Series. I'm talking about in those 95, 96, 97. They were messing around with Tony Fernandez and stuff.
Tony.
Kipnis and Ramirez are both better than anything they had for those 3 years. And I think, you got one slugger in Encarnacion. You've got a close second in Santana. And who knows what Michael Brantley will bring. I really do think it is.
And this bullpen's way better, too. This is the best bullpen they've ever had.
And I'll promise I'm not going to freak out about any losses, at least until in July. I'll say July. I'm not going to worry about the record or anything.
Twitter's going to go to Blaze. First time Cody Allen blows a save.
It probably
will be in April. It's going to be ugly.
And I mean, people are freaking about the Cavs, and maybe we've got some Cavs fan listeners because of the Burning River Basketball Podcast is on the same channel. The people are freaking out about the Cavs because they're playing poorly right now. They won the championship last year. Who cares? Like, they won it already. Give them a break, and they still have a good team, and they could win it this year. They're going to be in the playoffs. Just relax and like let it go. And I'd say that for the Indians, even though they didn't win the World Series yet. Relax at least through April and May, and just let it go, and let's see what happens. I'm not saying it's going to be bad. I'm not saying it's going to be good. I'm just saying you don't win the World Series in April and May. And Mike would agree with me. He left, but he's always said that.
But you can lose it.
All right, you can, but I don't think they're going to be that bad. If they were 2 or 3 games under 500, it would not worry me at all. I'm talking about at the end of May, even.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think this team is good enough. I'm really not going to worry about it, and I don't think they will be.
I don't either.
But I'm just not going to worry about it. All right, that's it for today. It's a bit of a long one. We went over a lot of stuff, but we'll be back with you once this season starts and talking about real, actual baseball. Since only 3 teams got to play today, well, within the next week or 2, we'll have some more stuff to talk about. All right, you can follow me on Twitter at BurningRiverBB. You can follow Justin at JL_baseball. John is John Hutch. Is it your whole name?
It's John Arthur Hutch.
Yeah, John Arthur Hutch. Mike is something weird. Mike Melaragno 22, because he's weird. And there must be a bunch of other Melaragnos out there, I guess. Thanks for listening.
21 of them, apparently.
And yeah, something like that. Be sure to join us next time on Burning River Radio. Go Tribe.